Hello, everyone. My name is Matt Arant. I'm the founder of Arant Academic Planning. I'm an independent educational consultant that specializes in Division III and Ivy Patriot League athletic recruitment. And this session is going to address alumni networking and career services at smaller colleges. So before we kind of dive into that, I'd like to introduce you to my guests. Mary, want to kick things off?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Mary Smith. I'm the Director of Admissions for Gettysburg College. I've worked actually very closely with our alumni over the years as we have a very robust alumni program through the admissions office. I am a Gettysburg alum, class of 2000, and have not left yet. So all 25 years have been at Gettysburg. People joke, sometimes you fall in love with a place through early decision. Well, I did, and I have not left yet. And I'm joined by my wonderful colleague, Jim. So I will kick it over to him for his introduction.
Thanks, Mary. Hello, all. My name is Jim Duffy. I'm the Assistant Vice President for Co-Curricular Education at Gettysburg College. I oversee our Office of Student Activities and Greek Life, our Garthwaite Leadership Center, our Center for Public Service, and our Pathways program. And in addition to that, I manage the day-to-day in our Center for Career Engagement. And that's where the link between the Center for Career Engagement and alumni plays a big role in our current students and even our alumni interacting with other alumni. This is my second time at Gettysburg, and I've been back since 2009, so going on 16 years.
Okay, thank you both. So the reason I want to talk about this topic is kind of stemmed largely from my own background. So prior to opening up my own practice, I worked at Franklin and Marshall College, a friendly rival to Gettysburg on the athletic fields. I was their athletics admission liaison for about 5 years, and I covered mostly the South. I was based both on campus and regionally in Texas. That meant I was on the ground to do a lot of college fairs, individual school visits, counselor, breakfast, things like that. And one of the things I always would hear, especially from the savvier college fair attendees, parents, or students, the ones that have already kind of done their research on which schools are at the fairs, what are they like, but beyond that surface level, kind of back and forth, oh, is your school, do you have a good business school or something like it? It's a bit more probing from that initial conversation is alumni networking kind of contacts, especially at a smaller school, because they kind of assume that the bigger schools, they have obviously they're going to have a lot more alumni. That means it's going to be a much far-reaching alumni base, maybe comparison to a smaller school. So I was wondering for y'all that work for a school of just over 2,000 students, right? That means fewer alumni. How does that alumni networking figure into not only the admissions process, but once they get to campus, how do they engage with alums all throughout their time on campus?
So I'll start with it from the admissions perspective. I mean, it's interesting timing right now. As we're having this conversation in April, I am working with a lot of our alumni who assist in connecting with students who've been admitted to Gettysburg and just making the connections with people in their area and building that community. The advantage of a school of our size of about 2,300 is really building the personal connections. We talk a lot about that from a campus community perspective, but our alumni hold that near and dear. When I send out a request to say, hey, we're going to have a reception in King of Prussia, I suddenly have 10 alums who want to join the admitted students and have this event with us. Or I send out an email to a group of parents because we also work very closely with our Parents Association. Hey, I'd love for some folks to send out accepted student postcards and congratulate and welcome admitted students. And all of a sudden I got 30 responses. So it really is such a close connection that all I have to do is say, this is Gettysburg calling. We've developed that relationship with individuals as they were students, from faculty to student, from student to staff. There's such a close-knit bond that continues not just through their 4 years at Gettysburg, but that's a part of them when they continue out into the world, and they want to give that back. And it is a very personalized connection. So while we might not have 50,000 or 100,000 alumni, I put out the word and it's a one-on-one connection. And that's from just an admissions perspective. But I know, Jim, you work very closely with the career connection piece, if you'll talk to that.
Yeah, very similar to what Mary said. All we really have to do is put a call out. And our alumni have been so generous to our students and to our Center for Career Engagement. So when you think about the typical things that folks would recognize in career, job shadows, externships, internships, career treks, which are for us are these small programs, if you will, at locations. So we do one in Orlando, Florida, around the theme parks. We did one just recently. We did a finance trip to New York City at some of the big finance firms. It's our alumni who are the lifeblood of these programs because we're relying on their expertise and their connections to connect with our students so that they can educate them on what those types of industries not only have to offer, but whether or not the students will be interested in that work. I tell students all the time, I think it's more important to know what you don't want to do than it is to know what you do want to do. And the only way you can figure that out is by experiences and talking with folks. And so when our students connect with our alumni, they get a very good sense of what that industry that alumni represents will entail and what the day-to-day work looks like.
So before we dive into guys some specifics, so Mary, you mentioned that you have conversations with alumni, but you also mentioned parents, which at first glance, parents of high schoolers don't usually make that connection. Oh, alumni network, it means they literally had to go to the school and graduate and they kind of go their separate ways. But then more and more of these schools are utilizing parents as a way to engage with students. So can you kind of speak upon like how that process works, if it's any different from your traditional kind of alumni specific events that you host throughout the year?
Sure. So, I mean, parents are so wonderfully engaged in their students' lives starting early on, and that doesn't stop when they get to college. So instead of saying, well, what can I do? We give those opportunities. So with I've been involved with our Parents Association, goodness, since I started in admissions. So nearly 25 years I've been working with our parents board and now our Parents Leadership Council, as it's called, as well as just parents who want to be involved. And they know that their child is happy here, so they want to help others. And as I'm sure parents you work with, they're very well connected in their communities. And again, it speaks to that Gettysburg network. So and so knows so and so knows so and so. And they want what's best for their child, so therefore they also want to help other people's children. So when I'm in conversation with our current parents, and for example, I want to put them in touch with admitted student parents, because from where I sit, from an admissions side, it's the entrance process. A parent wants to talk to a parent. In admissions, we're going to share a lot of wonderful information, and it's a lot of accurate information, but it's from my perspective, sitting in admissions office as a director of admissions. Whereas when a parent talks to a parent, it's a much more authentic voice. Well, how is your student doing? What is it like to fly from Texas to BWI Airport, and who picks them up? And what happens once they get to campus? And who's going to be there if they get sick? And who's going to be there if something comes up? Who do I talk to? That parent to parent conversation is key. I see it a little less from the parent to student, but it's the parent to parent that we find invaluable in the admission side of things. That process, in some ways, we're sort of lockstep. Just as students want to talk to current students and that authentic voice, what are you going through right now? Parents want to talk to parents. How is this working for your child? How have you felt for your child through this experience? I find that invaluable. And now, being a parent in the process, and Jim can also relate to this, I'm thinking about it the same way. My daughter is a senior right now. She's making her decisions, hasn't made them yet in terms of where she's going to go to college. But I'm listening to what other parents are saying. I'm checking out all the websites, I'm getting all the details and information, but I want to know about the parents. The other piece of it is, I love the fact that our parents are so invested that they're hosting job opportunities, that they're doing shadowing, that they're doing internships. And again, it's yes, the alumni are doing that, but our parents are very involved and committed to doing that.
Of course.
Yeah, I think I'll just add on to what Mary said. When we think of volunteers in the Center for Career Engagement, we talk about alumni, parents, and friends of the college. Friends of the
Mhm.
college being those folks who may not have a direct association to Gettysburg College, but have been referred to us by alumni and parents. At Parents Weekend, I have an opportunity to present and meet with parents. We wind up coming away with a number of internship opportunities for students. And much like Mary said earlier, I have the opportunity to meet with the PLC, our Parent Leadership Council, at least once a year. And again, that always creates more experiences for our students because everybody's willing to provide something for our current students.
Yeah. So now let's kind of shift gears a little bit to career services, which is kind of a blanket term, right? It could be internships, shadowing, advice on how to navigate graduate school, professional school. Like it's a blanket term that can be kind of going in all these different ways. And I was wondering how how is that focus used within the admissions processes? Is it like as a selling point coupled with admitted student events? Because I know when I was at F&M, we'd have panels with for parent panels, student panels, and then we'd always really kind of hammer home on Ospagod, which was our version of the career services, the internships, the shadowing. So I was wondering, how does that process look like from the beginning of the student's prospective applicant's journey all the way to once they set foot on campus, maybe as a first or second year student to kind of capitalize on those opportunities?
I think from the beginning, we are talking about those opportunities all the time to prospective students in high school visits, meeting with counselors, talking with their parents, everyone who's in that college going perspective, if you will, community-based organizations. And we're having the conversations about outcomes. And what
Mhm.
do you need to do back here to get to there? And Gettysburg does that extremely well. Again, from a parent's perspective, from an alum's perspective, what's happening after college? In all of my sessions, I always say there's two things when you visit a college, two things you have to do. A, check out where the Career Services Center is. If it's in the background of somewhere, that's not a good sign. Where is it? Is it in a central hub? Ours is right in the center of campus in our College Union building. So that's a big piece. Where is it? Is it obvious? Is it flourishing? Are kids going in there? Are they using it? So I definitely talk that up through the admissions process. The other thing I always recommend is eat in the dining hall. There's nothing like going into the dining hall and getting to know not only the food, but the community of people you're going to be with. That's always my two pieces of advice. But again, continuing along that path, I mean, we have 98%, and last year, 99% of our graduates have a job or are in grad school within the first year of graduation. And that is not by accident. It is very purposeful. At Gettysburg, we're big believers in the 1, 2, 3. You have to have the degree, that curricular, that content information. You have to have the hands-on experience. So that's the career immersive experience. That's the job opportunities. That's research. That's internships. That's the career experience, if you will, the hands-on. And frankly, it's all about who you know. It's a network. And that network is not just about one HR person coming to visit the campus and hosting a fair. We do those fairs, but it's the individual network with how students get those jobs. And our students, our graduates, do extremely well. And from an admissions perspective, I am always singing the praises of our Career Center and how well that happens throughout their 4 years at Gettysburg.
Because when you do these fairs, right, especially if you're next to insert Big Ten school, SEC school, where it's just everyone knows about it right off the bat. Because I would always joke with folks that when I was doing these fairs in Texas, I was pretty much the only out-of-state liberal arts college in the building, pretty much every time, right? So automatically you have to say you kind of have to go up against some misperceptions, right? Okay, small college, they don't have any like it's not that same conversations if they went to a bigger school. Because, oh, of course, I can get a job if I go to UT Austin or Michigan or UNC because that name is just going to put me through the finish line, which is not always exactly true. So I guess kind of piggybacking off that, how do you address those initial conversations when you're in a space in which Gettysburg is not at the forefront of their minds, whether it's a geographic difference or just the school itself? How do you, I guess, address that and redirect it to the work you're doing on campus.
One of the first things we do talk about is our location. I mean, Gettysburg may seem a little farther away from New York City, et cetera, but we're only an hour from Baltimore and an hour and a half from Washington, D.C., and 45 minutes from our state capital. So in a lot of ways, we're sort of in a very nice central location to a lot of major industries, a lot of major areas. And that really works well for our students in terms of benefiting from the location. Also, flying in from California, Texas, et cetera, a lot of international students are flying into our major hubs. So first, that location is something we have to talk about. That addressing it right out of the gate, that it is actually an opportunity, not a disadvantage. The other piece is because we're not in the heart of the city, people have to come to us. So instead of you're one of hundreds who are meeting with XYZ individual, it's a personal connection once again. So it's
They make that conscious effort to visit your school, talk to your
exactly.
students, because they can't just tack it on to an itinerary. Oh, I'm in New York, I'll just go to all New York schools. You have to consciously make the effort to go to your campuses.
And build that connection. And I know, Jim, I would love for you to talk about something that I talk a lot about now, and that's our Guided Pathways program. In a very intentional way, we've been able, I like to call it the ROI of the liberal arts, the value added piece through our Gettysburg approach. But Jim does such a nice job describing it. I'll turn it over to him.
Yeah, thanks, Mary. I think one of the things I want to touch on just before I get to the Pathways program is we talk about people coming to us, and we do a lot of what we call employer in residence days, where we bring an employer on campus. That employer does a number of things while they're here. They go into the classroom, they hold general sessions for our students. They may do interviews for our students if they have internships or job opportunities available. But as a staff, we also get to meet with those folks and get some more industry education. Mary teed me up pretty well here. Our Pathways program is now 2 years old. And the goal of the Pathways program was to better connect students' co-curricular experiences with their curricular experiences so that when they complete their degree, they can articulate the value of that degree in a way that is more holistic and in a way that makes more sense to employers and to themselves, quite frankly. So we have a Pathways program, as you see on the screen now. There's actually 5 pathways. You see the 4 in front of you, but career development is the 5th pathway, and career development is the one pathway that is required. Why is that? Well, we subscribe to early and often. This is not earth-shattering news, but it is supported by theory and by data that the sooner a student engages with a Center for Career Engagement, the more experiences they are likely to have. The more experiences a student has, the more likely they are to land a job or get accepted to grad school. And so we want students to get into the office as early as their first year. We even have career advisors that are assigned to each incoming student so students know who to reach out to right away. So the career development pathway is required, and then students can pick from one of the other 4 pathways that you see before you. And really what the pathways are is they're a way, I refer to it as structured flexibility. They kind of lay out all of the opportunities that we offer here at Gettysburg College outside of the classroom. So we have over 100 clubs and organizations, plus we have a Center for Public Service and a Leadership Center and an Eisenhower Institute. This is going to be extremely overwhelming to students when they first arrive on campus, but the pathways provide kind of a guide and a map for them to figure out what it is that they exactly want to engage with. And the first component of the Pathways program are introductory experiences. So think of it, it's akin to searching for a major. So students may participate in a Ascent program through our Garthwaite Leadership Center, which is a pre-orientation program. They may participate in Give Day, which is run by our Center for Public Service. So these short little experiences that expose students to what we offer at the college. We also have exploratory experiences, and those are kind of the next step. So we offer a certificate through our leadership program. That's an example of that. Study abroad is an exploratory experience. And then our last set of experiences we call consequential experiences. And what's unique about consequential experiences is that they have impact on the community. And they're akin to our capstone programs on the academic side. So you could think of a student leading an immersion trip out of the country, our student senate president, for instance. That would be a consequential experience. So really what the pathways do is they provide an opportunity for students to see all that we have to offer, to engage in those experiences, but in an intentional way that they can connect to their interests and their major. We have 3 co-curricular advisors who guide the students through this, working hand in hand with our career advisors and our faculty advisors to make sure that students have an approach to what they're doing that will then lead to the outcomes that they desire, and quite frankly, as an institution, we want them to achieve.
Right. So you mentioned that this was about 2 years old, correct?
Mhm.
So I was
Yeah.
curious, could you share with us how this kind of came about in terms of like, was it a natural byproduct that was already built in place, or was it kind of a reimagining of the whole experience? Can you just walk us through kind of that process?
Yeah, great question, Matt. So it came out of a strategic planning process, and we were also doubling down on what we do well. So we knew we had this active, engaged student body. And we also, through the strategic planning process, talked to alumni, and they said, I had great experiences, but in some times they were scattered, and other times when it was all said and done, I didn't know how to pull them all together. And so that's where the intentionality came out. So we have students at Gettysburg who are actively engaged in a number of things across the board, both in and out of the classroom. And really what we wanted to do, again, I'll use that term structured flexibility. We wanted to give them the options to choose from all these things, but lay it out in a way that it was better understandable.
Gotcha. Okay, looks like we have.
And I'll share one other piece that I thought was really interesting. As we were planning this, all of the strategic planning, we interviewed, or rather surveyed, about 200 employers. And we found this, and this was great data. We really looked at what is it about that liberal arts experience that is so unique and so special? And we know that students are developing more than just this is going to be my job, because quite frankly, the jobs the students we're recruiting right now don't exist yet. So how do we prepare students for that? So we looked at it from a skill set perspective. What is it that our students are doing really, really well within that liberal arts context? And this is what we found, that our students are very successful, our graduates, I should say, are very successful. But we also identified a set of 7, the top, if you will, enduring skills. And I'm actually going to scroll right up to those enduring skills that really employers told us this is what we need to see. We don't just need to see XYZ major. We need to see that students can problem solve, that they can think critically, that they can work as a team, all of these things. And we know as a liberal arts college, and Matt, having worked at a liberal arts college, that's what we do so well. What we don't always do as well is help students to articulate that. And so what they're learning through this guided pathways program is they're also learning how to articulate the skill sets they've been developing inside the classroom and outside the classroom. That's why I also love the personal advising team, that they will have that co-curricular advisor, that career advisor, that faculty advisor, and eventually, if they so choose, an alumni mentor, so that they're also surrounded by people who are helping them to guide them on their path. But to me, those enduring skills that we've identified, again, through research, through studies, but also what we know we've already been doing, really helps students to better articulate when they're going for a job, when they're applying to grad programs. Not only this is what I majored in, and here's my GPA, but what did I learn? And how can I apply that to the work you're asking me to do?
Great, thank you. So before we kind of wrap things up, I was curious because as we know, liberal arts colleges like pride itself on interdisciplinary kind of learning, right? So you have a student that might put on their application, oh, I want to study biology, and then they take organic chemistry and it doesn't kind of work out so well. So they have to kind of recalibrate. So I was wondering for the environment that y'all provide in terms of flexibility in curriculum, majors, minors, how does that interact with not only alumni networking in general, but finding those internships of shadowing? Is it more about just finding someone that has that same passion as you or developing the skills? Like, how do you approach that for someone who is generally undecided or who kind of vacillates from maybe two seemingly disparate academic interests.
Yeah, I going back to what Mary just said, that personal advising team is core to this conversation. So when you think about our co-curricular advisors, that first year that they're meeting with students, they're asking about their why, right? Why Gettysburg? Why are you here? What is it that you want to do? What is it that you want to take advantage of? And I would say that many students coming to Gettysburg don't know what they want to do. And so it's our job to make sure we expose them to things that they may have an interest in, things they may be curious about, things they may want to know more about. And so I think we do a great job on the academic side. Our faculty advisors encourage that and do a wonderful job of that. On the co-curricular side, in particular on the career side, we have a number of tools that we can expose them to that help them get at that. What is it that I may want to do? And I think going back to my point earlier, Matt, the more experiences that students can engage with, the better off they can be. I always share this. This is a perfect example. We actually had a student years ago who said to me, I want to be an investment banker. And I said, that's great. So we set that student up with a 3-day job shadow. The student came back to me and I said, how was it? And he said, oh, it was awful. He goes, I don't ever want to do that again. I said, that's great. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, this goes back to my point. It's more important to know what you don't want to do than it is what you do want to do. And my point to the student really was, could you imagine if that was your first 3 days on a full-time job? So I think really what gets at the core of your question is exposure, right?
Yeah.
Exposure to experiences, exposure to different academic interests, exposure to our alumni. We have a great tool called Connect Gettysburg, where students can engage in a platform and reach out to alumni and ask them all types of questions. And it's people ask us, oh, isn't that similar to LinkedIn? Well, I say, no, it's not, because they could reach out to somebody on LinkedIn and never hear from them. The alumni who are on Connect Gettysburg have already raised their hand and said, yes, I want to talk to students. Yes, I want to help students understand what my industry is about. Yes, I want to help students figure out what they want to do in the future. So I think, I've always said the more that we can expose students to and the more that students are willing to experience, the better the outcome at the end.
Great, thank you. And so I think before we kind of officially wrap up, so Mary, I was hoping you can kind of address this question. So folks that are watching this are going to be a mix of students, families, and probably mostly counselors, because we know how that goes and information kind of filters down from the school-based leaders themselves. So you kind of mentioned already about visiting the campus and seeing where the Career Services Center and alumni offices are. Is there any other advice you would give to those students or families as they approach the college search with this question in mind about how important is the alumni network to me as well as career services? How would you kind of approach that question and guiding those families with kind of figuring that part out?
Sure, especially as students are just starting out the process. That is an easy question to ask in an information session on a campus tour. Tell me about your career services network. Tell me who oversees that? Where is it based? What opportunities are there? And hopefully your tour guides know a lot about the Career Center. If they don't, that's a red flag. If they don't, but also, could they see it? As my daughter and I were visiting colleges, it was interesting to see what a mix that was. And I started asking the question. I said, where's your career center? Where is it? And sometimes I was impressed with a very open area, lots of tables for conversation. I could see it was used. And then there were others that, the room was dark, or, here were the hours posted. Here was a sign for opportunities, but it didn't seem very active. So I think some of those initial questions are very easy to ask, but it's going a little bit deeper to say, how many alumni are involved and in what way are they involved? Not just that we've got 30,000. That's nice. What are they doing? Are they hosting the internships, the externships, the career immersive experiences, the dinners, the shadowing, and on and on and on and on? And if that's your answer, that tells you something. And then you look at the percentage at the end. What percent are getting jobs that they have a high satisfaction in? Not just, I've got a job, that's nice. Is it a job they care about? Is it a job they're highly satisfied with? We track all of that data, and you can ask those questions, or grad school, of course.
And also the specific places, right? It's one thing to say, oh, we have 90 something percent, but if it doesn't tell you actually where they are, then it's incomplete data, right? You want to see what it means to, if you're, especially you're coming out of state, right? You're coming from California to a school 3,000 miles away. You want to see, is there a potential pipeline back to LA or
Right.
Seattle or Denver? Or do I need to kind of put all my chips in with Philly, DC, New York? So that's another thing to have that
Right.
specificity built in too.
The other thing we did, or I should say, our institutional research area did, Sue Dong, she's amazing. She's in our IR office, and she has an interactive dashboard, and I believe it's right on our career services site, where you can go by major, by industry, by area for the last, is it 10 years or 15 years, Jim?
It's about 10 years. Yeah, it's a great tool.
So you can see very specifically. And the other piece is at a liberal arts college, many students are double majoring and minoring. So you can also see that in the interactive dashboard, that you can see if a student is doing, are they leaning this direction? Are they leaning this direction? Or I should say the graduate. But you can see we have a lot of grads in business. We have, and this is where they are. Or we have a lot of grads in law school or in the law field. And where are they? We've got a lot in Boston, for example. So you can see that through our interactive dashboard before you even get to campus, which is a really nice research tool.
Yes, exactly. Well, I think that's a good note to end on, is showing how specific and comprehensive the information is, right? Because you need to have at least both of those in order for it to be fully a genuine approach for students. So on behalf of the two folks on the call from Gettysburg, I'd like to thank you for attending this session and hope you have a good rest of the day.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Matt.